An age-old question within the witch fandom is actually an age question.
The age of Phobos!
So I've scrounged through all of Arc 1 and that one flashback of Phobos' youth back in Arc 4, and I believe I have an answer. A major thing to look at is the history of the veil, because we need to determine whether or not the veil was actually built because of Phobos. Let's look at the evidence. Here is the first lore that we received regarding the veil when the girls were getting the Heart of Kandrakar. Yanlin says, "This is a story as old as time, a distant time, when everything was young and spirits and creatures lived under the same sky. There was a single universe, an immense kingdom ruled by nature, a kingdom that lasted eons, until spirits and creatures learned evil, and all was divided into those who wanted peace and those who thrived on others' pain. To separate the two sides, the veil was created. Evil and injustice were banished to the dark realm called Metamor." And that's all we learn at that point. But there is no mention of Phobos. We see good people in Meridian, and supposedly all of evil was placed on one side of the veil and all of good placed on the other. I'm wondering if that was the original intention, and after generations of these people being trapped on either side, there of course is new people being born and new morals and new alignments. So probably what once used to be an entire evil planet is now not entirely evil, and maybe Kandrakar had to learn that there is no one way or the other, that there is gray area. In issue 12, when they are taking down the veil, we see that it seems like the veil has only been around one planet. You can determine this glow as the veil. I at first was considering maybe the planets that have smoke around them as ones with veils, and maybe just that magic burst was the smoke descending down to the Oracle, but the veil's never really talked about or brought up again, so I'm determining that that beam of light around that planet is the veil, the one and only veil. So it sounds like maybe all of evil was put onto one planet, which further does institute that maybe the veil was created for Phobos.
Somewhere inside these fig bushes is my family, but I do not know where. So much time has passed, and so many new roses have bloomed.
Now, I'd like us to look at Daltar, the gardener of the Garden of Black Roses. And we first see Daltar in issue 8. According to his backstory, Phobos asked him to create a bush of roses with lethal thorns stretching from the castle to Meridian. Daltar refused, saying a wall would be much better. However, Phobos then demonstrates what he means and turns Daltar's wife and child into black roses. Daltar says that all of the black roses in the garden are made from living beings, saying that he created millions of these black roses, and that anyone who touches the thorns also get turned into black roses. Which I do briefly want to point out here that it's then interesting that his number changes and says that these flowers are thousands of desperate souls who tried to enter the castle to beg Phobos for mercy. So that kind of makes me think that thousands of them were people who accidentally touched the roses and turned into roses, and a lot of the rest of them were people forced into being roses, like prisoners or something. That's very cruel. And then Daltar seems to get a little sick when he starts to say that he can't leave this garden and that he must tend them because somewhere in here is his family. And he specifically says, quote, "So much time has passed and so many roses have bloomed." And he starts to sweat, which I'm thinking maybe he has been frozen in time himself, that he is starting to feel ill when he tries to think about how long it's actually been, because it's been so long that he can't comprehend, because of course he has not aged in the slightest. Now, this could indicate that many, many years have passed since Daltar has been tending this garden. I mean, he legit says so many years have passed. But of course, it does not give us a number to go off of. Now, when Daltar's family and everyone else from the Black Roses are freed, we see that his wife and daughter are the same age as they were when they were transformed into roses. I doubt that these millions of flowers grew within such a short amount of time, because Daltar says that he's been there for so long that too much time has passed. And if his wife and child are the same age, I doubt it's been a few months. It's definitely been years and years, and it's just interesting that they are stuck in the same age. So that makes it also very hard to tell how long Daltar has actually been trapped here. But I thought it would be interesting to point out. In issue 9, when the girls are making their first trip to Kandrakar, Yen Lin gives them another history of the Veil that's different from what they received when they got the Heart of Kandrakar. For example, she says, "It was created to defend the rest of the universe from the threat of Metamor." Mind you, Metamor was what they established as the Dark Realm where all evil was banished to. But in this history, we get to see that Elyon was prophesized. It says, "The ancient wise men of Kandrakar erected the barrier as we waited for the light of Meridian to rise and illuminate the dark universe." So they were expecting Elyon for many, many years to come. And I guess it doesn't say how she would become the light of Meridian, but they knew she was eventually coming. It goes further to say her arrival would restore balance. Until then, the Guardians watch over the Veil, and it shows a previous group of Guardians. And then here's where it's interesting. It specifies,
"You have been entrusted with the most difficult task, to defend an old collapsing barrier and protect Meridian from the evil plans of Prince Phobos."
I feel that them pointing out specifically that they're protecting the Veil and preventing Phobos as the most difficult, meaning previous Guardians likely didn't have to deal with Phobos. And just that in waiting for the light of Meridian, Phobos was a necessary evil to make that balance happen. I mean, I'm saying right now that Kandrakar let Phobos happen. When discussing whether or not the Veil was built for Phobos, it's important to mark that Metamor does not equal Phobos. Metamor is just the world that all of the evil was put onto, surprisingly enough to fit onto one world, and Phobos is just a resident there, a key piece in the story of Elyon becoming the light of Meridian, which is why I said Kandrakar's responsible for him, because I think they let Phobos reign in order for Elyon to be created, or at least for this path to happen. We've seen the Oracle turn a blind eye before in order for something to happen, because things are happening the way they're supposed to.
Those fools from Kandrakar thought they could punish me by cutting me off from the universe with their ridiculous veil.
In comic issue 11, we see Phobos give a little more context to the Veil. In the Abyss of Shadows, he shows Cedric what used to be a river of magical energy, which are now thin streams that pool. And he says that he used this energy to become stronger and to conquer entire worlds. It sort of sounds that the Veil was created to keep Phobos trapped. And it must have been quite some time ago that this once raging river of power is now a trickle.
For a long time, I worked for the royal family, and after the disappearance of the king and queen, Phobos ascended the throne.
One major point of time reference that people use for Phobos is Elias Van Dahl, and he's the guy that got trapped in the painting in issue 5. When the girls introduce themselves to Elias as the Guardians of Kandrakar, he's surprised and says, "You look a bit young to be centuries old protectors," meaning to Elias, the Guardians he knew were centuries old. That'll be crucial for a future theory. When Elias goes into his backstory, he talks about how he originally escaped Phobos' reign. He decided to exit through a portal, saying that he travels to another dimension in another time, deciding that the 17th century was a good time for artists, and he lives there for a bit. It does not essentially mean that Phobos was alive during Earth's 17th century, because Elias right there states that it was another time. Meaning, I guess portals can be used for time travel or to enter a certain time period in a world. It seems like Elias got to choose where he went to. another point on Elias Van Dahl is when he says that Phobos' soldiers found him, we clearly see Cedric there. And they end up surmising that Elias has been trapped in the painting for 400 years. That doesn't make Phobos 400 plus years old because the painting was left here on Earth 400 years ago from the time that the girls are living in. So we can rule that out as Phobos' age. Because once again, Elias traveled to a different time, according to him. But I'm thinking since the girls don't understand portals in the sense of using them as time traveling, that the point we see in Meridian is equal to the time that we are in on Earth. Okay, so the original creators leaving obviously messed up whatever lore that they had going. But we could have assumed maybe Phobos was born a significant amount of time before Elion was. Perhaps he was maybe born like 15 years before her or something. And maybe it just took a long time for the king and queen to conceive a baby girl, and once they did, maybe that's when Phobos took out his parents. We could have gone off of that if it wasn't for a flashback of Phobos in Arc 4. In Arc 4, we see Phobos flashback to when he's looking at the crown and wanting the crown. He seems to be about 5, and we see baby Elion. So that just means that Phobos is about 5 years older than Elion. Then Phobos somehow is saying that as a 5-year-old, he conquered worlds and took out his parents and was enough for the veil to be constructed. So even though when the original writers left and they went with the veil was built for Phobos, they contradict it with this scene alone. And I'm still going to try to make it work. So thinking of Phobos as an unhinged 5-year-old that's power hungry, he could have overtaken the throne. That power stream that he's been pulling from could have overwashed him with all these evil, sinister feelings. And maybe the planet itself is using Phobos. I did see a theory out there from back in 2014 that I'll link below, that someone thinks that this stream could have aged up Phobos. And we could have gone with that. But I really don't like that theory because of the whole Meridian time change, that Meridian's time travels faster than Earth's. Coming up with an actual theory for Phobos' age is near impossible because of all of the loopholes and contradictions that are written into the story. Either way, Phobos seems to have been a child king that took over, and it must have taken a lot of time for him to figure out how to find Elion, because Cedric and Vathic seem to have waited until she was about 14 to make their move. We also don't know if Elion grew up in Heatherfield, because we see Cornelius say that she has only been in Elion's grade for the past 3 years. And it's just such a strange coincidence that Elion happened to be friends with one of the Guardians. I don't think that the veil went up because of Phobos. I think that Phobos is mistaken, and him saying that the veil went up for him was a bit of narcissism coming into play. Somehow the veil is centuries old, and it's both somehow also been put up because of Phobos. If a portal can be used, as it was for Elias, to travel through time, then it's safe to say that maybe others had used it to travel through time. Perhaps Miss Rudolph and Elion's adoptive parents used the portal to travel to modern-day Heatherfield. And that could mean that Elion was taken through a portal to Earth in a different time. Maybe they decided to travel to the future or decided to travel to the past. It's very unclear. I believe that Miss Rudolph and Elion's parents were in on when the new group of Guardians would be coming, and possibly even who they might be. We see mentioned in Arc 2, at least, and maybe a little bit in Arc 1, that Will was special, that she was chosen for a reason to be a Guardian, and they don't really tell you why, which we'll go over in a theory someday. But for this point right now, I'm wondering, the people of Meridian, when they come to Heatherfield, they can shapeshift into a human form, as we see with Miss Rudolph and Recef's family, and we can surmise that they can choose what they look like. Elion's adoptive mother, Myriadel, chose to have short red hair, and I wonder if she chose this form, knowing that the future Guardian incoming would have short red hair, and is maybe hoping that taking this form would lead Elion to trust the new leader of the Guardians, or at least have that familiarity in order to cooperate and feel comforted with them. Now, based on my brief note in my Arc 1 timeline video, the original creators leaving the comics did definitely affect the story. As we know, Elion was originally meant to be a villain. So working with what we have this fact that Miss Rudolph tells us, 1 Earth day equals 10 days in Meridian. But then we never see that apply to anything. Elion doesn't age faster or anything like that. But here's how it still works. The river of power that Phobos has been pulling from, finally draining, is how he has been keeping himself young and Meridian running. And maybe the time being sped up was because of Phobos. And after he's defeated, his spell is broken and time begins to travel normally in Meridian. Perhaps Phobos saw that he needed to speed up time in order to catch up to where Elion was in time in the other universe. And he'd just been keeping himself young like a vampire. At the coronation, we see the crowds of people reacting to Phobos walking among them. One person says, quote, "To think that before today he's never walked among us." We know that Phobos never really left the castle. And that could be because that was his safe bubble in preventing himself from aging. Now, it's safe to say that he didn't figure out this immediately. Based on Daltar's description of his backstory, it seems as though Phobos needed him specifically in order to create these Garden of Roses. So perhaps Daltar was also under a spell to keep him young. And perhaps the castle itself is safe from Phobos' time spell. The Wall of Roses could be the marking of the border around the castle being safe from Phobos' time spell. This could explain how Daltar's family remains young as well. The comic makes a big point to show us that Phobos can bleed. When he's trying to steal the crown and he throws it against the wall, it bounces off and strikes his cheek, and he looks very shocked that it has cut him. And I know as readers that's to really show us that he's not invincible, but also it could be a sign that his magic is weakening, that he's no longer invincible, that now that he can be cut, he is changing. He can be changed, and his magic age spell, his time spell on the castle, could be broken. Phobos admits in the final battle that he's got nothing left to lose, that his powers are growing weaker. Now, the show throws a pretty big wrench into this theory, and why is that, you might say?
Back in the day, we saved the Zambalans from an attack by Phobos.
I don't see a lot of people talking about how old Elion might be, because you have to remember, as old as we make Phobos, Elion has to be also just as old or nearly as old, because in the comics, Phobos is obviously 5 years older than Elion. And then in the show, he's obviously probably about 10 years older than Elion. Even though this vision from season 2 is not true, because it's not actually how the queen and the consort behaved, we could still guess that maybe Phobos is 10 years older than Elion in the show. So how is he doing it? In the TV show, the Garden of Black Roses isn't really a thing, and even Daltar is not a character, and Elias is not shown to be from the past or have traveled. There's nothing about time travel with Elias in the show. However, in the show, we see a lot of these vines that are drawing energy or pulsating energy from Meridian into Phobos' sauna. So in the show, Phobos might actually be drawing from maybe the planet's life force, which then leads to destroyed crops, terrible land. That makes sense. So I can't quite explain the time difference in the TV show. I can't figure out how to make that work. Because even if it's been 60 years, that means Elion has been around for possibly that long. And even though we saw more of Elion as a character in the TV show, we don't really get provided with really any more information on the time frames of things. And really, that's why you can't really solve this plot hole. Phobos' age is the biggest plot hole because you really can't figure it out without some fancy footwork like I've been doing here. He definitely was not around for the veil being created because of the Elion special that states that someone in her ancient family crossed over from Britain into Meridian. There's still like holes and loopholes. You gotta make it tells Cassidy it's been 40 years since she died, being a sort of pocket dimension that nobody's worrying about, maybe or his early 20s, probably around. We know the TV show is established as an alternate universe, as based on the opening of Earth year is 12 years. So multiply 168 plus
Quote,
5, a very
thousands
long
of years
time,
old.
which is more like hundreds
I mean,
of
also
years
makes
old.
it million hundreds of
Hoping
years old.
Phobos would die. Clearly didn't die. I mean, we know Cedric used a portal to get to Elias, possibly a 5-year-old Elion, in a house. That's all I've got for you. I don't have a solid number, but it's in the hundreds. Not over 200, I'd say. Somewhere under 200 years old Phobos is. But it's, again, this is an impossible plot hole to solve. There's too many times you almost get close to an idea, and then there's something to rip it out from under you. So leave a thought down below on what your theory is with Phobos' age and anything like that. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching this witch theory, and I hope to have more in the future.
Meet Sheffield's newest foreign exchange student.
Behold, am I not down with my bad self?